Have you ever wondered why helping certain people leaves you feeling emptier than before? You offer your hand, and somehow you're the one pulled into the dark. I've seen it happen, good hearts breaking under the weight of misplaced mercy. The Stoics warned us. Compassion without wisdom turns to self-betrayal. Some souls can't be saved. Stay, and you'll learn why. As we step into the first chapter, picture this. A man standing in the middle of a storm, trying to hold up another who refuses to walk. His arms tremble, not from lack of strength, but from carrying a weight that was never his to bear. That is the tragedy of helping those who will not help themselves, the chronically lazy. They are not evil, they are simply comfortable in their weakness, and that comfort becomes their poison. They come to you with eyes full of exhaustion and words soaked in complaint. They speak of how unfair the world is, how the odds are stacked, how life has chosen others over them. You listen because your heart is kind. You reach out because you think your strength can become their rescue. And maybe, for a brief moment, it feels noble. But Seneca once warned, "He who spends his life rescuing the ungrateful destroys his own peace." The truth is simple. When you rescue those who refuse to rise, you are not saving them. You are surrendering to their stagnation. The lazy have mastered an ancient art, emotional persuasion. They know exactly how to stir your pity. Their stories always end with a sigh long enough to trap your empathy. They never demand, they perform, and you, moved by the illusion of goodness, fall into their quiet performance again and again. One favor turns into another. One rescue becomes a pattern. Until one day you realize your life has become a series of apologies for their failures. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." But the lazy turn that lesson upside down. They make their obstacles into identity. They live not to overcome them, but to repeat them. Their misfortune becomes their script. Their struggle becomes their brand. And every time you intervene, you give them another reason to stay exactly where they are. I once watched a friend carry his younger brother through years of excuses. The brother had no shortage of dreams, but none of them survived contact with discipline. Every time he fell, my friend built him a new foundation, paid his debts, found him work, offered shelter. For a while, it felt virtuous, but each act of mercy fed the brother's apathy. Years later, nothing had changed except the exhaustion in my friend's eyes. That's when I understood. Mercy without wisdom becomes cruelty. Because it doesn't save the other, it kills the savior slowly. Epictetus taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. But when you keep saving someone who refuses mastery, you lose your own. You start confusing kindness with purpose. You tell yourself that enduring their weakness makes you strong, but that is a dangerous illusion. True strength is not carrying what others refuse to lift. It's knowing when to set it down. Nature understands this better than we do. A mother bird does not feed a grown chick that refuses to fly. A tree does not nourish a dead branch, not from cruelty, but from wisdom. Because in nature, mercy has rhythm. It gives, but it also withdraws. Only humans mistake endless giving for love. The Stoics saw that clearly. Compassion without boundaries is vanity disguised as virtue. So when you meet the lazy, the ones who drain your energy while calling it care, ask yourself a simple question. Without me, what would they do? The answer reveals everything. If they truly wished to rise, they already would have. If they truly wanted to change, they wouldn't still be waiting for your hand. The truth hurts, but it frees you. There will come a moment when silence will be your only teacher. No lecture, no farewell, just the quiet act of stepping back. That silence is not cruelty, it is correction. It is the universe's way of restoring balance. Because in the end, you were not born to carry others forever. You were born to define the limits of your kindness. So, withdraw. Not with bitterness, but with peace. You are not abandoning them. You are returning responsibility to its rightful owner. And as you walk away, remember this. When your heart learns to love with wisdom, your mercy becomes strength, not sacrifice. Let that be your lesson. Sometimes refusing to rescue is the most powerful form of compassion, because when you stop saving those who refuse to move, you start saving yourself. And this is where the next truth begins. Moving into the second chapter, imagine this. You pour your heart into someone, give them your time, your energy, your best intentions. You lift them when they fall, defend them when others doubt them, and one day, when you finally pause to breathe, they look at you not with gratitude, but with accusation. Why didn't you do more, they ask. That is the sting of the ungrateful, the silent theft of the soul. It's a kind of betrayal that leaves no wound on the body, only a quiet ache inside your chest where generosity once lived. There are people who take your kindness not as a gift, but as proof of what they believe you owe them. The more you give, the more they expect. Seneca once wrote, "A benefit consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver. Yet the ungrateful see no intention, no grace, only obligation. Help them once, and they smile. Help them twice, and they relax. Help them a third time, and they begin to believe your kindness is their right." Their memory is short when it comes to goodness. They remember pain longer than mercy, because pain wounds their pride, while kindness wounds their vanity. I once knew a man who paid his friend's rent for 6 months. The friend had fallen on hard times, and it seemed noble to help. But in the 7th month, when he could no longer afford to continue, the friend turned cold. The warmth of gratitude vanished, replaced by resentment. "You changed," he said. "You don't care anymore." In that moment, 6 months of kindness were erased by one act of self-preservation. That's the curse of the ungrateful. They can love you only while you are giving. The moment you stop, you become the villain in the story they tell themselves. Marcus Aurelius warned, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But he also understood that goodness without wisdom becomes self-harm. The Stoics believed that gratitude is not a social courtesy, it is a mirror of virtue. A grateful heart recognizes effort and returns respect. An ungrateful one takes, consumes, and demands more, leaving you wondering when kindness became servitude. Have you ever noticed how the ungrateful twist your silence into guilt? You step back to regain your peace, and suddenly you're accused of coldness. They'll say you've changed, that you've forgotten them, that you've become selfish. But selfishness is not the act of stepping away from those who drain you. It's the act of giving until there's nothing left to give. The ungrateful don't need your help. They need your attention. They feed on it. Their greatest fear is not losing your aid. It's losing the audience that validates their misery. Epictetus once said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." The ungrateful live in the opposite way. They grieve what they are not given and despise what they already have. When they lose your kindness, they don't reflect, they rage. Because your withdrawal reveals what they have always known deep down. They were never strong enough to stand without being carried. So what do you do when faced with this kind? You do not argue, you do not beg for acknowledgement. You step back and let silence speak. Gratitude cannot be forced, and once it dies, no amount of explaining can revive it. The Stoics understood that silence is the final teacher. When the flow of kindness stops, truth begins. Let them stand before the emptiness they created. Let them feel what absence feels like, because the moment the source of their comfort disappears, they finally meet themselves. One day they will remember you, not with affection, but with awakening. They will remember the calmness with which you withdrew, the dignity with which you chose peace over performance. You will smile not out of pride, but because you understand the law of balance. Kindness without limits becomes a leash, and those who refuse to appreciate will eventually strangle themselves with it. The Stoics would tell you this: gratitude cannot be demanded, but ingratitude must not be indulged. For if you continue to feed it, it will consume everything pure in you. Do not fear being called cold. The world doesn't need more kind people who are tired. It needs strong souls who know when to stop giving. When you reach that point of calm clarity, when you can say without anger, "I no longer help," you'll understand what true freedom feels like. Because freedom is not found in being loved for your kindness. It is found in no longer needing to prove it. And that, my friend, is where real strength begins. Advancing to the third chapter, imagine a man standing at the top of a crumbling tower he built from his own pride. The ground below shakes, the walls tremble, yet he looks down on everyone else and says, "I'm fine." That's the nature of arrogance. It doesn't crumble from outside attack. It collapses under its own illusion. These are the people who never seek help. Not because they are strong, but because they cannot bear to admit weakness. They build fortresses of certainty around their fragile egos and call it wisdom. They listen only to respond. They ask only to prove they already know. And when you extend a hand, they look at you not with gratitude, but with pity, as if you are the one in need of guidance. Marcus Aurelius once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. The arrogant live in that impossibility. Their world is built on the illusion that being right is safety. They can lose everything, money, love, reputation, and still cling to the one belief that keeps them blind. I know better. To them, being wrong is death. Admitting ignorance feels like collapse. So they turn every truth into an offense, every lesson into an insult. When you speak truth, they hear attack. When you offer perspective, they sense betrayal. The Stoics called this sickness of the mind, the delusion that knowledge without humility is strength. But in truth, it's the deepest form of fragility. I once worked beside a man like this, brilliant on paper, charismatic in public, but untouchable in conversation. You could show him a solution written in clear light, and he'd twist it into argument. Every word you offered he turned into a mirror to admire himself. Until one day, his project failed spectacularly. Deadlines missed, investors gone, the very people he dismissed walked away. I saw him weeks later, quieter, smaller, no longer declaring certainty but asking, "Where did it go wrong?" I didn't answer. Life had already done what no counsel could, stripped him of illusion. The Stoics would call that the mercy of consequence. For some, truth does not enter through the ear, it crashes through the ruins of pride. Epictetus warned, "It is impossible to learn that which you think you already understand." That's why trying to teach the arrogant is like polishing a fogged mirror. The harder you rub, the more it breaks. They'll accuse you of jealousy, disrespect, betrayal, anything to protect the fragile empire of self. And when the collapse comes, as it always does, they won't curse themselves. They'll curse you, the one who tried to help. But the wise do not waste energy defending their good intentions. They understand that time and silence are the only teachers arrogance ever listens to. The Stoics believed that silence has its own form of justice. You don't need to prove truth. You only need to stop offering it where it's not welcomed. The arrogant thrive on audience. They need the noise of argument to keep their illusion alive. But when you stop engaging, when you withdraw your attention, they lose their stage. The performance ends, and in the quiet that follows, they begin to hear the faint echo of their own collapse. That's why silence isn't surrender. It's precision. It's the sharpest blade the wise ever wield. There's a strange beauty in watching arrogance meet reality. It doesn't fall gracefully. It crashes like a decayed tower, finally giving in to time. The one who once shouted, "I'm right," eventually whispers, "I was blind." But if you rush to catch them mid-fall, you rob them of the lesson. They will rebuild the same illusion, stronger and taller, and drag you into the same argument again. Sometimes the kindest act is distance, because distance allows pain to do its work. And pain, in the Stoic sense, is not cruelty, it's clarity. Seneca wrote, "To be humble is the path to greatness." The arrogant see humility as death, not realizing it is rebirth. So when you meet them, those who argue to dominate, not to understand, do not correct them. Observe them as you would a storm. Let the noise pass. Let the clouds break. Let reality teach what your words cannot. And when they finally fall silent, not because you silenced them, but because their own pride exhausted them, that's when your calm becomes their mirror. They'll remember the stillness in your eyes, the steadiness in your voice, the fact that you didn't fight for approval, you simply stood in truth. In that moment, your silence will teach what their ego could not. So let go of the need to win the argument. You don't owe wisdom to those who worship ignorance. Redirect that energy toward those who listen, who ask not to perform, but to grow. Because arrogance will always destroy itself. And when the dust settles, what remains is the calm of the one who never shouted. That is the quiet victory of the wise, the understanding that silence wins where words fail. Entering the fourth chapter, imagine a quiet room where someone smiles while planting poison in another's cup. Their words are kind, their voice soft, their intentions seem pure. Yet behind the calm exterior, every gesture has been rehearsed, every word sharpened. That is the face of deliberate cruelty, the kind that wears understanding as disguise. It is not born from ignorance. It is crafted, measured, and intentional. There are people who harm not because they're lost, but because they choose to. They study your kindness like a weapon, learning exactly where to strike. Seneca once wrote, "No evil can happen to a good man, for his virtue shields him." But what he meant was not that harm doesn't exist, it's that the wise learn when to close the door before it enters. The Stoics knew that evil does not always come with noise or rage. Sometimes it enters quietly, dressed as repentance. The cruel do not need chaos, they thrive on precision. Evil, after all, is not confusion. It's discipline without conscience. Those who walk that path know what they do. They see your trust as currency, your pity as weakness, your mercy as an open gate. And once you let them in, they do not change. They adapt. The liar learns to cry. The betrayer learns to apologize. The manipulator learns to confess. They mimic the language of redemption, not to heal, but to disarm you. I once knew a man who believed everyone deserved endless forgiveness. "There's good in everyone," he said. So he kept giving second chances, to friends who stole from him, to colleagues who slandered him, to a lover who lied as easily as breathing. Every time they returned, they came wearing the same mask of sorrow. And every time, he believed it. Years passed, and he changed. Not them, him. His warmth turned to exhaustion, his clarity to confusion. And when the last betrayal came, he didn't even feel anger, just silence. That's when he realized kindness had turned into complicity. The Stoics would call that the corruption of mercy, when virtue is used against itself. Epictetus warned, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Evil operates on the same principle. The wicked already know right from wrong, they simply prefer the profit of wrong. Helping them is not guidance, it's endorsement. Every favor given becomes a resource for harm. Every attempt to save them delays the only teacher that can reach them: consequence. Because consequence does what compassion cannot, it strips illusion. If you keep rescuing those who harm, you deny them the mirror of their own actions, and in doing so, you lose more than energy. You lose moral clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." The world confuses that truth. Many believe that to be good means to forgive infinitely. But infinite forgiveness is not virtue, it's blindness. It's refusing to see when goodness becomes fuel for destruction. The Stoics taught discernment, to separate the curable from the corrupt, the mistaken from the malicious, to protect light not by feeding darkness, but by denying it the oxygen of your attention. There are souls that do not seek redemption, they seek shelter. And if you open your door long enough, their storms become your sky. History itself repeats this truth. Empires did not fall because enemies invaded. They fell because their defenders refused to see evil within their walls. They called it tolerance. They called it mercy. They called it love. But cruelty only survives when the good refuse to set boundaries. Seneca warned, "To forgive all is to despise the good." There is a kind of love that destroys, and it begins with the lie that everyone deserves to be saved. The Stoics knew better. Some doors must close for light to remain pure. Some hearts must harden for virtue to endure. So if you ever find yourself forgiving the unforgivable twice, understand this: it's not compassion that drives you, it's fear. Fear of being called unkind. Fear of appearing cold. But coldness, in the Stoic sense, is not cruelty. It's awareness. It's the courage to stop feeding what devours the good. The wicked fear that awareness more than punishment, because when you see them clearly, their spell breaks. Without your pity, their power dies. Without your audience, their darkness suffocates. And in that silence, justice is restored, not by anger, but by absence. Because in the end, true love is not rescuing everyone. It's refusing to betray your soul in the name of saving another's. Let the cruel face the storm they've summoned. Let them meet the emptiness they've built. Do not stand between them and their lesson. This is what the Stoics called the compassion of distance, a love wise enough to step back, a heart strong enough to stop trying. Remember this: light does not defeat darkness by embracing it. It wins by outlasting it. And those who understand that truth no longer fear being called cold, they simply call it clarity. From here, picture a man standing before the same door of failure again and again, knocking with the same hand that once burned. He curses his luck, blames the lock, and never wonders if he might be turning the handle the wrong way. That is the mark of the ignorant who refuse to learn, the ones who stumble endlessly, not because fate is cruel, but because they refuse to see that the ground beneath them is their own doing. The Stoics often said that pain is not punishment, but instruction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way, yet the ignorant see only the obstacle, never the lesson." There are two kinds of those who fail. One falls, learns, adapts, and rises wiser. The other falls, points fingers, and declares himself the victim of unfairness. The first grows, the second repeats. You'll recognize them by their stories, different faces, same endings. They are always the ones almost making it, always betrayed, always unlucky. But the tragedy is not in their misfortune, it's in their blindness. I once knew a woman who changed jobs every few months. Each time began the same, with hope, excitement, confidence, and each time ended the same, with conflict, blame, and collapse. She'd call, exhausted, swearing she didn't know why life treated her so harshly. But life wasn't doing anything to her. Life was mirroring her. The Stoics believed that the world is a reflection of the self, and until one corrects the inner pattern, the outer pattern repeats. The ignorant cannot see this. They mistake patterns for accidents, chaos for coincidence. They don't realize that repetition is destiny trying to get their attention. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." The ignorant never reach this understanding because they see adversity as insult. Their pride rejects pain's wisdom. They crave the comfort of familiar suffering because at least it's predictable. Freedom terrifies them because it demands responsibility. And so they stay where they are, complaining, recycling, decaying, each failure proving only their resistance to awakening. You can try to help them. You can speak softly or firmly. You can explain, warn, encourage. They will nod in gratitude and go back to the same self-destruction, as if addicted to their own misery. It's not evil, it's inertia. It's easier to remain wrong than to rebuild the self. But every time you rescue them, you participate in the illusion that words can replace consequence. Epictetus warned, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The ignorant reject mastery. They prefer comfort to truth, and when comfort collapses, they will simply rebuild their pain again. You cannot save those who refuse the cost of learning. Wisdom has a price: humility, accountability, effort. The fool rejects all three. He believes life happens to him, not through him. When you try to teach him otherwise, he treats your truth as insult. You cannot reason with one who worships his own blindness. You can only step aside and let life teach him through collision. Because words may fail, but pain speaks a language he cannot ignore. I've learned that growth begins not when we learn something new, but when we stop running from what we already know. Pain repeats itself until we listen. One mistake faced with honesty is worth more than 100 apologies without change. The Stoics called this the discipline of perception, to see cause and effect clearly, and to accept the responsibility of our own footprints. The fool cannot do this. He sees life as an ambush. The wise see it as a mirror. So, if you find yourself trying to guide someone who keeps returning to the same fire, step back. Let them burn long enough to feel what words never could. Do not hate them. Do not despise them. Simply protect your peace. Because every time you bend down to lift one who refuses to stand, you lower your position of strength. Once you step too low, it's harder to rise again. This is not coldness, it's clarity. The Stoics called it the selection of the wise, to give your wisdom only to those ready to receive it. For if you spend your life pouring into emptiness, you will one day find your own cup dry. And that is the greatest betrayal of all, not against them, but against wisdom itself. At this stage, imagine standing in front of someone who smiles softly while quietly pulling the strings that move your life. They never raise their voice, never demand, never threaten. Instead, they sigh, they tremble, they whisper, "I don't know how to do this without you." And just like that, they have you. Not by force, but by feeling. That is the genius of the manipulator, the one who doesn't steal your freedom, but convinces you to give it away. The Stoics warned that the most dangerous form of control is not chains on the body, but chains on the mind. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But manipulators live by the opposite law. They study the emotions of others and use them as levers. They don't attack your reason, they dissolve it. They make you want to prove your goodness. They make you afraid to disappoint. They turn your empathy into obedience. It always begins gently. They play the role of the broken one. "I'm not strong like you," they say. "You're the only one who understands me." And in that moment, they've hooked the first thread into your heart. You feel noble, useful, needed. You believe your strength can heal them. But soon, that thread becomes a web, and the web becomes a cage. You start to act differently, softer, quieter, always careful not to hurt their feelings. You find yourself explaining, apologizing, sacrificing. What once was kindness becomes servitude. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The manipulator knows this truth too well. Their survival depends on making you forget it. They draw power not from dominance but from your reaction. They don't demand energy, they provoke it. Every sigh, every pause, every wounded silence is a calculated move. And you, in your desire to help, feed the very thing that drains you. You give your time, your energy, your patience, your peace, until one day you feel hollow but terrified to let go. That's when they've won, not through strength, but through your need to be seen as good. I once watched a friend trapped in such a web. The manipulator in his life was subtle. Every argument ended in tears, every truth twisted into cruelty. "You don't understand me," she'd whisper, and he'd crumble with guilt. He stayed for years, mistaking pity for love. When he finally left, he didn't leave with anger. He left with silence. And that silence shattered her illusion more than any confrontation ever could. Because when you stop reacting, the game ends. Manipulation dies in the absence of attention. Seneca wrote, "He who does not rule himself is ruled by another." The Stoics called detachment not coldness, but wisdom. It is the art of seeing without absorbing, of caring without surrendering. When you finally learn to observe instead of react, you reclaim everything the manipulator took. You stop performing, you stop defending, you stop explaining, and in that stillness, you become unreachable. Understand this: manipulators are masters of disguise. Today, they are the victim, tomorrow the hero, next week the judge. They shift roles as easily as breathing. But the moment you refuse to play, their stage collapses. Their stories lose meaning because their favorite role, the one who controls you, no longer exists. So what must you do? Cut the strings. No warnings, no speeches, no goodbyes. They already understand. They simply don't care. Your silence will teach what your words never could. Because when you stop reacting, they vanish like smoke. The Stoics would tell you this: detachment is not rejection, it is protection. The heart that learns restraint is stronger than the one that gives endlessly. And when you finally walk away, you don't lose empathy, you regain dignity. For the manipulator can only exist when you fear being alone, but the one who embraces solitude becomes untouchable. As Marcus Aurelius said, nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. When you understand that, you stop being a puppet. You stop being prey. You become calm, composed, sovereign. And that is the ultimate freedom, the silence that ends every performance. Entering the final chapter, imagine a candle burning beside another that never lights. One gives until it fades, while the other stays dark. That's how some people drain you, not through harm, but through need. They call it love, but it's dependence disguised as affection. Their wounds become your responsibility, their moods your burden, their chaos your constant weather. At first, you feel noble for staying. They whisper, "You're the only one who understands me." And slowly, you begin to disappear. The Stoics warned against this kind of entanglement. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Yet when someone else's emotions command your peace, you lose that power. They suffer just enough to keep you near, and each time you rush to rescue them, you tighten the invisible rope around your freedom. I once knew a man who lived this pattern. His partner was gentle but endlessly wounded. Every day brought new sorrow, new need, new exhaustion. He called it love, but love had turned to servitude. One night he said quietly, "I can't remember what makes me happy anymore. That's when I learned empathy without boundaries becomes self-erasure." Seneca taught, "Associate with those who make you better." The emotional leech does the opposite. They cling, not to grow with you, but to feed on the strength you mistake for love. You silence your needs just to keep the peace. But peace built on your silence is not peace, it's captivity. Epictetus warned, "He who gives another power over his peace makes himself a slave." The only way to reclaim your freedom is through detachment, not coldness, but clarity. Withdraw gently, no anger, no guilt. You're not abandoning them. You're ending the illusion that you can save someone who won't stand on their own. When you stop reacting, the performance ends. The emotional leech cannot survive without your attention. And in that silence, truth emerges. Compassion has limits. If you pour endlessly into those who leak, you both drown. Remember this. Empathy is sacred, but it must serve wisdom. Never confuse love with obligation or kindness with surrender. The Stoics called it disciplined mercy, knowing when to give and when to walk away. When you stop fearing loss, you become untouchable. That is freedom. The deepest truth about kindness is this: it was never meant to save everyone. It was meant to protect what is sacred within you. The Stoics taught that mercy without reason becomes weakness, and love without wisdom becomes a wound. True compassion is not endless giving. It is the quiet strength to walk away when your peace is at risk. Coldness is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is the soul's way of guarding its light. When you understand this, you stop feeling guilty for choosing peace. You begin to live with calm, strength, and purpose. If this message spoke to you, comment with 3 words: choose awareness. And remember, wisdom grows in silence. Subscribe and stay for the next lesson, where we continue walking the path toward power, peace, and disciplined kindness.